The Holy Communion is to start shortly. Will the 7 freshman representatives please report to the stage? A voice echoed throughout the gathering hall. The 7 representatives waiting at the edge of the stage walked up and stepped into line. Their combined presence seemed to fill the stage to the brim. Archbishop Kim Chang-won, the chairman of Florence Academy, will lead the ceremony. Please remain silent throughout. This request was hardly necessary as it was already dead silent in the auditorium. Florence Academy, also known as FA, was established to nurture upcoming clergy members to cleanse the world of demons, Satanists, and cultists. Florence Academy was the most recognized among the clergy academies. Being the elite school that it was, all students were known for their devout obedience to the Ramanican doctrine. Plop, a clear sound filled the room like a single water droplet falling into a peaceful lake. Moments later, a pure white halo spilled forth from the archbishop's hand, engulfing the archbishop and the representatives. The blessing of the 7 representatives had begun. Each representative was chosen to represent one of the 7 heavenly virtues: humility, charity, kindness, patience, chastity, temperance, and diligence. I knew that most of us looking from the crowd were thinking the same thing. I wish I was up there with them. The 7 anointed with the holy names of heavenly virtue were eligible to become prelates. Prelates had access to fame, fortune, and power unobtainable to the regular clergyman. Most students at FA wanted to be prelates. Because of this, most students looked at the 7 representatives with adoration, envy, and jealousy. I, myself, wanted to become a prelate. I would have cut off an arm for the Holy See if that let me become a prelate. That was how desperate I was. Of course, everyone had their own reasons to want to become a prelate, be it for fame, money or power, and so did I. But my reason was a little different from most. How much do you know about the Holy War? An unannounced lecture was taking place after the end of the blessing ceremony. The students looked blankly back at the lecturer. A few awkward seconds of silence filled the room. The lecturer smiled as if to hide her embarrassment. I'm sure all of you FA students are familiar with the Holy War. It happened 7 years ago between the voodoo cult and the Ramanican church. Flick. The screen changed with a flick of the lecturer's fingers. A simplified table detailing the timeline of the Holy War was displayed on the screen. The lecturer swung her laser pointer as she started to explain. The war started off with the voodoo cult's protest. Originally, these protests were held to raise awareness of the discrimination towards voodooists. However, they started getting out of hand and escalated into a terror movement. So the Holy See sent out paladins to stop these people. The rest of the lecture was obvious. One of the paladins had died trying to stop the terrorists. Unfortunately, the voodooists did not stop their campaign despite the paladin's death and continued terrorizing the public. The Holy See had no choice but to send the Holy Army and Inquisitors to end the madness with brute force. That was how the Holy War had started. The Holy War led to many casualties caused by the voodoo cult leader and the prophet. They used the power of lesser demons called the Loa. The lecturer's voice started to grow louder and louder. The Loa were strong enough to be called demonic catastrophes. The voodoo cult leader and the prophet harnessed their power to drive people to the brink of death. However, we Ramanicans resisted their attacks till the very end. The lecturer's face was flushed red as she passionately exploited the evils and wrongdoings committed by the voodooists. By this time, I was asleep. I'd heard this story repeatedly and deemed it not worth my time to listen to it again. I also planned to make up for my lack of sleep because I had struggled to fall asleep last night. After resting my eyes, I found the lecturer no longer on the stage but amongst the students. In fact, she was standing in front of me, a smile on her face, staring into my eyes. "And what's your name?" she asked, placing the mic next to my mouth. Everyone's eyes were on me. I felt a little queasy. I somehow cleared my throat and opened my mouth. "My name is Du Sun Wu." "Sun Wu. You seem to be taking a good nap. Can you tell us about how the Holy War ended?" she asked with a grin. I could hear the muffled snickering of the students around me. I regretted dozing off. I would not have fallen asleep if I had known that I would be found out. After countless sacrifices, the Ramanicans emerged victorious. The second cult leader and prophet were executed, the voodooists became an official cult, and the Holy See is still looking for the third cult leader, who they believe is out there. Am I right? I was glad that I could answer the lecturer's question. The lecturer looked back at me with surprise. The snickering around me turned to surprised signs of admiration from the students. "You're exactly right. I guess you were bored for a good reason," the lecturer said jokingly as she made her way back up the stage. "The third cult leader is hiding, scheming, and implementing his evil plans. The Holy See is." The lecturer continued her conspiracies about the third cult leader and the Holy See. The lecture shortly after came to an end. Many students yawned as they got up, piling towards the auditorium's exit. The opening ceremony concluded with the end of the lecture developing proper history knowledge through reviewing the Holy War. As I walked toward my home, I was greeted by a familiar alley. I saw broken trash bags at the foot of telephone poles and scribble-filled, vandalized walls. I slowly took in the unpleasant scenery as I walked by. This alley was a necessary stop on my way back home. As the blue sky was slowly painted red, I saw a man hunched over by a telephone pole, riddled with rubbish. I recognized him, he was the old cripple who regularly hung out around the area. I reached into my wallet and pulled out a 10,000 won bill, placing it into the can in front of him. Thank you very much. The crippled old man said as he bowed his head, almost touching the ground. I waved my hands to say it was nothing and quickly walked away. You waste your money. Far away, I saw two well-built men walking toward me. They were both wearing white clothes patterned with yellow crosses. From their looks, they seemed to be paladins responsible for peacekeeping in the surrounding area. The two spotted me and quickly approached me. The bigger and more intimidating one out of the two asked, "Hey kid, do you walk through this alley often?" Yes, I answered. Is that so? Then have you seen who put up these flyers? The paladin took out a piece of paper. On a rainbow background, a hard-to-read font said "Come become a voodooist and take home a tablet PC." No, I don't think so, I replied. Yeah? Have you seen these flyers before? Nope, I've never seen them before. Are there still voodooists around? I asked with an innocent face. The paladin smiled knowingly. I want to say no, but seeing these flyers, I guess it's hard to say they are gone for good, he said. I see, I replied with a slight nod. The paladin scrutinized me through squinted eyes. Are you a student from FA? He asked. Yeah, I just enrolled, I said. Ah, I see. I guess we might meet in the future, hahaha. Good luck with your studies. Thank you. I replied, bowing respectfully. The paladin still had his kind smile and waved. As the paladin's back faded into the distance, I whipped out my handkerchief to wipe off my sweaty temples. Perfect acting, as always. It's in your blood. I brushed off the booming voice inside my head. But the voice got louder and louder the more I ignored it. How long are you planning to ignore me? There were a lot of problems with the lecture at the opening ceremony. The Romanicans are the best when it comes to fabricating lies. We have a lot to say about this. I kept my silence and continued my walk home. A few moments later, I found myself in front of a dark black set of stairs that seemed to stretch into the void below. My house lay below these stairs. As I passed through the darkness and slowly descended, I reached into my bag. I must have put it here somewhere. There were 4 lies told in the lecture today. Yeah, I know, I replied. Aha. I took out a mask from my bag and brushed the dust off. The mask was an off-white color, weathered by time. It gave off the characteristic smell of clean bone. First of all, the Loa are not demons. We are noble voodoo elementals. I put on my mask and made sure it was secured fastly. Second of all, the voodooist cult leader and prophet did not kill anyone. Thirdly, the voodooist cult leader died. But the prophet is still alive and is being held hostage in the underground prison below the Holy See headquarters, I said, finishing their sentence. I took off my uniform and put on my prepared clothes. I resumed walking down the stairs. After a while, I finally saw a door with slivers of light seeping out the side. Lastly, the 4th lie. I opened the door and stepped into the light. Ooh! Immediately, an uproar of screams and cheers erupted. Of course, these cheers were for me. Our leader has returned to enlighten us. I took the microphone from the high priest and I slowly warmed up my voice. The 3rd cult leader has no evil plans and he's not as bad as people think. No, he's a goody two-shoes that feels bad for crippled beggars and even gives them money. I brought the microphone close to my mouth. Hello, everyone. I hope you've been well. It is I, your leader. Bye. Another round of cheers rocked the air. It seemed loud enough to shake the foundations of the world. However, he is crazy enough to enroll in FA while being a cult leader. The voice stopped with that comment. The voices were the Loa. They were voodoo elementals holding tremendous power, rivaling that of gods. My father had been the 2nd cult leader and my mother was the prophet who took care of the Loa. But my father had died and my mother was in chains. Let's start the service. I was the 3rd cult leader and the prophet of the Loa. I was public enemy number 1. In the chancel behind the underground chapel. Uncle, what did we say about handing out these things? I asked after the service had concluded. If we don't do anything, we'll run out of money soon. Don't you know that our numbers are going down every day? He said. If you're going to make flyers, at least make them look good. Why design them like this? I picked up one of the many flyers on the ground. The flyer had a gradient rainbow background with words that were painfully hard to make out. It was a devastating design. What about it? Isn't it cool? My uncle didn't seem to see the problem. I clenched my eyes and placed my hands on my throbbing head. Lee Jin-sung was my maternal uncle and the high priest of the voodoo cult. He was the one who handed me the microphone earlier. He administrated most of the affairs in the cult and was also a capable information broker. However, although he was blessed with many talents, he was missing any traces of talent in the field of aesthetics. Change the design. Maybe it'd be better to pick another person to oversee the marketing design altogether, I said. Hey, who's going to pay for these new people? What's wrong with the rainbow background? Does it not have an elegant look? You know what, never mind. I had a feeling that talking to him would be a losing game. I shook my head as I walked past my uncle and entered a room. The room smelled of mold. I would have ventilated it if it had any windows. I lay down on the bed next to a corner of the room. The blanket was wet from all the built-up moisture. Erg, I groaned. And be helped. We are underground. The voice suddenly said as I made a complaint. It was the voice of the Loa that was residing in me. The Loa's name was Legba. They were the ruler of all Loa. Holding up to their name, Legba's power and voodoo magic were capable of doing unimaginable tasks. Or at least, that's what Legba claimed. I do not lie. Everything I say is true. Yeah, I believe you, I said, nodding. Of course, it must be the truth, although I haven't seen it. I just can't show my full potential because we don't have the altar. I didn't say anything, did I? I replied. You didn't seem convinced. Quit complaining and bring back our altar. Legba added with a displeased tone. Ignoring their complaints, I stretched out my right hand and started drawing in the air. Not long after, a purple light started seeping out my fingertips. I used the light to draw many lines and squiggles to manifest a cursor ray in thin air. The completed magic array spewed an ominous purple mist. It was the curse of greater enchantment, a spell that tampered with the mind. The Romanicans used divine power, while the voodooists used voodoo power. It was possible to cast a curse by drawing a cursor ray with voodoo magic as the core. Spectacular. Legba seemed impressed. I was the voodoo cult leader, so I could easily draw a cursor ray using voodoo essence. I was number one in this business. The problem was I had almost no chance to put this talent to use. The world had framed the voodooists as a harmful cult, and voodooists could not escape immediate imprisonment upon getting found out. If this was how they treated regular attendees, imagine what they would do to me. The Romanicans would burn me alive as they had done with my father, the second voodoo cult leader. Do not fret. You just need not get caught. And you won't. I was never worried, I said. No one knew how I looked or my name, so I knew that my risk of getting caught was slim. That was why I couldn't use voodoo essence. I would be immediately found out. I used my right hand to call off the cursor ray and used my left hand to draw another image in the air. My hands lit up again, but this time, with a white light. Instead of using voodoo essence, I was using divine power as I drew a lesser blessing of strength. Pathetic. Legba clicked their tongue in disappointment at my drawing. I agreed with them. The blessing array drawn with divine power paled compared to my cursor ray. The difference in skill was more apparent because the cursor ray I had just conjured was more complex. Don't be discouraged. It is a fantastic feat to harness both divine power and voodoo essence. Legba tried to comfort me, but it failed to lift my spirits. I plopped back onto my bed with a heavy heart. I couldn't utilize my strong skills in voodoo essence, yet I was talentless in using divine power. At this rate, I won't be able to graduate, let alone become a prelate. I don't think you have to become a prelate. Living as the voodoo cult leader doesn't seem bad at all. But I don't want that, I replied. Plus, there's no guarantee that your mother is still alive. No, she is alive. My father died 7 years ago during the Holy War, and my mother was thrown into the Holy See headquarters underground prison. The only people who had access to the prisoners were prelates with the rank of cardinal or higher. I had enrolled in FA to become a prelate to meet my mother. I trudged to school the next day with heavy footsteps. I had taken a nap in the underground chapel and returned to my house during the night. My uncle had given me this house as a gift for successfully enrolling into FA. It would have been suspicious for me to constantly walk back and forth between our chapel and FA every day to go to school. Although the room was close to FA, it felt hard to go to school because I found it quite lonely. I dragged on my heavy feet one step at a time and, soon after, was greeted by a mystical and magnificent scenery that never ceased to amaze me. Green trees and lively sprouts filled the walls. Behind those walls lay the numerous buildings stretching out from the main building, built in a Gothic style. The sun was high in the sky, and its rays seemed to bless the area it kissed. I was on the FA campus grounds. Look at how good their facility looks when they're the reason why we breathe moldy air during our services. I easily ignored Legba's grumbling. I slowly walked down the luscious pathway toward the first-year building. I finally reached my classroom. On the front of the door was a doorplate reading first-year charity. Without hesitation, I opened the door and walked into the class. I sat in the empty seat in the back next to the windows. The RRRK. Soon after, someone opened the door firmly. The person walked in with an attendance folder and a beaming smile that radiated happiness. She walked towards the teacher's table at the front of the room. Good morning. It seems that everyone's here. It looked like she was the homeroom teacher for the class of charity. Hack, tack. The teacher taped the stick in her right hand onto the desk. All students looked up from their books at once. Nice to meet everyone. My name is Ha-Yi Jin, and I am the homeroom teacher for the class of charity. I hope we have a great year together. Are any students planning to apply to the Department of Priests? About a third of the students hesitantly raised their hands. I'm glad to see more of you than I expected. I teach utilization of the divine power and supervise the Department of Priests. I hope to see some of you in my classes, Ha Yijin said, her dimples deepening as her smile widened. Anyways, welcome to FA. Things will be different from middle school. You'll have harder content to learn and more practical classes as well. Although it'll be hard to adapt to the new environment, once you do, it'll be less stressful than you might think. Ha Yijin continued with a soft smile on her face. I understand that you'll feel nervous and excited. However, I want you to embrace that feeling. It is the privilege of being a freshman, after all. Rather than scaring the students of the upcoming school year, Ha Yijin encouraged them. She spoke with a smooth tone and was always smiling. She was gorgeous and made a great first impression. The year seemed like it would go smoothly with her as our homeroom teacher. Oh, by the way, I have some traits that I do not tolerate. I was finishing my last thought when Ha Yijin's face suddenly turned stoic. The sudden change in expression sent chills through my bones. These qualities include blasphemy, not following the teacher's orders, committing any of the 7 deadly sins, idol worship, and believers in heresy. If I find anyone with these traits, I will take matters into my own hands and make sure they get expelled. Ha Yijin smiled as she finished her comment. Of course, if this doesn't apply to you, I will always treat you with love. I hope no one disappoints me. I gulped. Idol worship and believing in heresy. That was me. Worshipping idols. You worship the true God, us Loa. That was precisely the problem. Believing and worshipping the Loa was idol worship and heresy. That's how it was after the Holy War. But, of course, our noble Egbo would not understand. Don't be sarcastic. That concludes our homeroom meeting. Oh, and Bei Sung-hyan. Yes ma'am. One male student answered as he got up from his seat. It was Bei Sung-hyan, one of the 7 student representatives and the holder of the holy name of charity. He was tall and handsome and without a blemish on his face. Sung-hyan will be the class president. In FA, we give this position to those who hold the holy names. Therefore, the position will rarely be subject to change. Well then, I trust you will work hard for this class, Ha Yijin commented. Yes, ma'am, Bei Sung-hyan said as he bowed his head and sat back down. Ha Yijin gave Bei Sung-hyan a beaming smile and left the room with her attendance folder. The room started to stir up with life as soon as she left. Everyone was talking to their friends to relieve each other of the new semester anxiety. Everyone except me. I didn't have any friends. Some people walked around trying to make new friends, but unfortunately, no one came to talk to me. Most of them went to talk to the class president and holder of the holy name of charity, Bei Sung-hyan. How did you get the holy name of charity? One of them asked. I did well on the entrance exam and had experience following my father around for charity work. I think that's what gave me the edge. Bang, the student said in awe as they adoringly looked at Bei Sung-hyan. Bei Sung-hyan had a smug look on his face from all the attention he was getting. Although I had not planned to eavesdrop, I overheard their conversations as I stooped over my desk. I pitied the state I was in, stooping low enough to listen to the discussion of others. Don't feel lonely. Legba said in consolation. It didn't help. To be exact, I didn't need any consolation. I wasn't sad that I didn't have friends. I rarely felt lonely. I was just glad that I wasn't getting bullied. A student from my middle school crossed my mind. Their parents were Satanists who had been arrested and put in jail. The student had fallen victim to terrible bullying. Although a school violence countermeasure committee was opened for their case, it ended with the antagonist being let off with a mild punishment while the victim had to change schools. If I hadn't hidden my identity, I knew I would share the same fate as that student. I was using a fake identity fabricated by my uncle. My mother was a paladin who had been a casualty of the Holy War, and my father was a clergyman dispatched overseas. Thanks to this identity, I could safely enroll in FA and avoid unwanted attention through guilt by association. I guess my problem with befriending friends was not because of my fake identity. Not relevant. As Ligba said, it wasn't relevant. I had come to FA to become a prelate to see my mother. I had no time or space to make friends to reach my goals. Using all my time to practice harnessing my divine power might not be enough to reach my goals. To become a prelate, I would have to stand out from the crowd in the upcoming physical test. Most of the classes that day were orientations. The teachers were trying to gain the favor of the students in preparation for the day coming in a month. They tried to avoid gaining resentment from the students by leading the first class off with material. So, a teacher would have to be mad to start off the year with a full-fledged class. At least, that was what I thought. Hello. My name is Kim Bok-dong, and I am your teacher for practical physical education. I am also one of the instructors in the Department of Paladins. Today we will start with some training exercises. I will not be taking any complaints. Surprisingly, such a mad teacher existed. The teacher, who introduced himself as Kim Bok-dong, dragged everyone out to the field, even the ones who had yet to purchase the gym uniform. Amidst the dust-filled field, Kim Bok-dong carried on his explanation. Practical physical education might sound like an unfamiliar course. You guys might have heard that clergymen do not have to pay attention to their generic degree of fitness. Or to be exact, they do not have to focus only on their general fitness levels. Does anyone know why this is the case? An awkward silence followed. Everyone, including myself, was gauging the room and avoided answering the question. A few moments later, a tall male student confidently raised his hands. "What's your name?" asked a teacher. "It's Bae Sung-hyun," he replied. It was Bae Sung-hyun, the holder of the holy name of charity. "It's because you can use different body-enhancing blessings to increase the physical capabilities of the body," briefly he answered. "You're correct. Most clergymen can enhance their physical capabilities through blessings. So, does this mean they do not have to focus on improving their general fitness?" I shook my head. It was more important to exercise because they were clergymen. Kim Bok-dong picked up one of the kettlebell-shaped weights off the ground. "The answer is no. You have to focus more on physical training to maximize the efficiency of the blessings," Kim Bok-dong said, throwing the weight with ease. The term flying was the most accurate word to describe the path of the weight. Bang! The weight landed in the middle of the field. White dust sprung up and clouded around the center of impact. The distance traveled by the weight looked over 200 meters. It landed so far away that it was hard to gauge correctly. Just now, I threw weight with my physical strength without any blessings. It seems to have gone around 250 meters. "What do you think would happen if I used blessings this time?" Kim Bok-dong asked. Kim Bok-dong expelled some divine power and drew an array for a lesser blessing of strength. Light spilled from the blessing array and wrapped around Kim Bok-dong's right arm. He threw the weight once again. This time, the weight did not land on the field. Instead, it sailed through the air and over the school walls. I was awestruck watching the scene fold in front of my eyes. Kim Bok-dong was a monster. The lesser blessing of strength increases the user's strength by 50%. However, through training, you can increase this multiplier threefold. This is why you have to train in practical physical skills. It will also help in increasing the mastery of your blessings. Kim Bok-dong explained as he picked up another weight from the ground. "It seems I have talked too much. Today we will test your strength through a general fitness test. The student who throws the weight the farthest will score the most points. The person who gets the second longest distance will score lower than the first, and so forth. You are free to use whatever blessing you want. Any questions?" A student raised his hand. As expected, it was Bae Sung-hyun. "Forgive me if I'm wrong, but I heard there is a way to get full marks, regardless of the distance thrown," he asked. "Ah yes, I forgot. There probably aren't any of you who can accomplish it, but I guess there is no harm in explaining," Kim Bok-dong said as he tapped his finger on the weight he was holding. Some students' eyes lit up at the mention of full marks. "First, throw the weight past the 50-meter mark. Then estimate the landing point of the weight and catch it. If you can do this, I will give you full marks regardless of the distance traveled by the weight. I guess you could call it a special case." The lit-up eyes of the students quickly turned to despair. It was hard enough to throw the weight 50 meters to begin with, let alone catch it with one's own hands. One would need the strength to throw the weight 50 meters and the agility to run at least 50 meters in 2 to 3 seconds. I don't know about anyone else, but I was sure I wouldn't be able to do it. At least without their help. But that said, let's start the test. First up is the holder of the holy name of charity, Bae Sung-hyun. Bae Sung-hyun stepped forward. He stood in front of the start line, took some deep breaths, and expelled divine power through his fingertips. Moderate blessing of strength, lesser blessing of the musculoskeletal system, lesser blessing of recovery, I can't tell the rest. Each one of Bae Sung-hyun's blessings boasted high difficulty to cast. Channeling all his blessings into his right hand, Bae Sung-hyun threw his weight. Zoom. The weight flew into the air. Bam. And it landed with a disastrous thud. 212 meters for Bae Sung-hyun. Kim Bok-dong announced. Everyone was speechless at Bae Sung-hyun's unbelievable record. The holder of the holy name of charity received a blessing of superhuman strength from the Pope. This unique blessing gave the blessed superhuman strength and the ability to share this strength with someone else. It was a blessing well fitted for the holder of the holy name of charity. Bae Sung-hyun's tremendous strength came from this blessing. "Bae Sung-hyun," Kim Bok-dong called out. "Yes sir." Kim Bok-dong had a smile on his face. "Not only was your basic strength admirable, but I can't help but applaud your skillful utilization of blessings. You used the blessing of recovery to minimize the possibility of injury, allowing you to use the moderate blessing of strength to its full potential. Outstanding work. I hope you all can learn from this if you can," he said. Bae Sung-hyun's lips were shaking as if trying to stifle his happiness. "Thank you sir." "No worries, return to your position." Bae Sung-hyun walked back toward the waiting group of classmates. The students gazed at him with eyes filled with jealousy and awe. Bae Sung-hyun seemed to enjoy this attention. Next, Kujun Hyuk. Kim Bok-dong continued to call forth students. Many students stepped up to throw their weights, only to step down with faces filled with disappointment. Most were not able to pass the 50-meter line. However, there were a few students that showcased their talents. Toward the end of the test, with no surprise, first place was Bae Sung-hyun, second was Kujun Hyuk at 162 meters, and third place was Young Ah at 143 meters. Do Sun-woo. I was the last student called up. At this point, no one was paying attention to me. Instead, everyone was complaining about their injured shoulder or lying down from the drawbacks of using too much divine power. The light seeping from my lesser blessing of strength wrapped around my arm. Then, without anybody noticing, I called forth the power of the Loa. As I positioned myself for my throw, Kim Bok-dong shook his head skeptically. Is that all you are going to do to prepare? Yes, sir, I replied. I said you can use any blessing you want. So why are you only using the lesser blessing of strength? I hesitate. Do I have to tell him? I was embarrassed. This is the only blessing I can use. Kim Bok-dong gave me an understanding nod. Thaha. I heard the sounds of students making fun of me throughout the crowd. I knew this would happen. Alright, resume with your attempt, Kim Bok-dong muttered as he stared at me. His arms were across his chest and he looked at me with low expectations. I lifted the weight above my shoulders. The 10.25 kilograms weight wasn't heavy but seemed rather light. Both the blessing and power from the Loa helped with the weight, but the Loa's power seemed to help more. Loa Basu responds to the call of the prophet. Legends say Basu killed 1,000 enemies with their bare hands when they walked the earth. Their symbol was a bull, and living up to his symbol, their power was superhuman strength. It was a miraculous strength that surpassed the mere capabilities of man. Zoom. I threw the weight. It had slipped at the tip of my fingers, so it seemed it would fall short of Bae Sung-hyun's record of 212 meters. That didn't matter because my goal wasn't to overtake his record. Scrunch. I lowered my stance and flexed my legs. Basu's superhuman strength coursed through my legs, eliciting an eerie sound from my knee joints. Swoosh. I propelled myself forward as I broke into a run. The sound of the wind filled my ears as my body sailed through the dusty wind with explosive power. My goal had been this from the start. I would catch my weight and get full marks. As I said earlier, Basu's symbol was the bull. And charging was what bulls did best. My muscles had already exceeded their limits. My knee joints were screaming in pain and I was panting for air. It wouldn't have been weird if I had fallen at any moment, but I continued to run. Even if all my joints were broken, even if my muscles were torn into shreds, I would not stop charging. My eyes were set on only one thing. The weight I had thrown. The weight had drawn a parabola in the sky and was falling at an alarming rate. I raced toward the estimated landing spot. I could do this. At my pace, I could easily catch the weight. I was sure of it. Hop. I caught the weight initially, but the moment I caught it, I felt all strength leaving my body. I fumbled and lost my grasp. The reason for this was simple. The effect of Basu's power, superhuman strength, was gone. Oh, sorry. I haven't had a pleasing sacrifice in half a year. I don't have the strength. Basu apologized with a low-spirited voice. Their voice and superhuman strength slowly faded away from my body. Then the pain came. It flooded my system. It hurt to move my legs, and my joints were aching like they were broken. I couldn't breathe, and I could feel my consciousness fading. The side effects are immense now without the altar. If you feel like this is unfair, find it and bring it back. Legba's tone was mocking, but I couldn't respond. I was busy tossing and turning around in the sand. Damn it. Why did we have to lose the altar? Why did that person steal the altar, of all things? Who stole the altar? I would kill them if I found out. The thoughts of pointless regret and resentment, I blacked out. Everyone had different desires in life, be it money, fame, or power. All these desires stemmed from the same emotion. Superiority. Superiority was the best word to describe Bae Sung-hyun's life. He had lived a life of many victories and exercised the right of the victorious. He took what he wanted and stepped over people whom he deemed lowly while looking at them with contempt. Superiority sustained him, and he expected it to stay that way. I can't help but applaud your skillful utilization of blessings. You used the blessing of recovery to minimize the possibility of injury. When Bae Sung-hyun returned from his throw, Kim Bok-dong praised him for many reasons. Bae Sung-hyun didn't listen to most of the things that Kim Bok-dong said. Instead, he returned the gazes of his classmates looking up at him. Praise me more. Admire me more. Bae Sung-hyun thought as he hid his sly grin. There was nothing to see after that. No one came close to beating his record. Most students' throws didn't even make it past the 50-meter line, and even the more talented students couldn't throw past 200 meters. No student posed a threat to Bae Sung-hyun. Except for one. This is the only blessing I can use. At first, he had thought that the student was a nobody, someone who had enrolled in FA by luck and had no right to be here. The student was the same, no, even inferior to the common folk. However, Bae Sung-hyun changed his mind when he saw the boy running after his tossed weight. The boy looked like a bull, charging crazily toward his target. No, maybe more like a cheetah. Do Sun-woo had almost gotten full marks by catching his weight. Of course, he had unfortunately made a mistake and failed. No, not unfortunately. For Bae Sung-hyun, it was a fortunate event. Ah, he's fainted. Kim Bok-dong ran toward Do Sun-woo, who was lying down in the middle of the field. Everyone else snickered and chatted in the absence of Kim Bok-dong. Why try to do the impossible? I know, right? If he had thrown the weight normally, he would have easily made it to 5th place. He's either stupid or he believes in himself too much. As he listened to this conversation, Bae Sung-hyun could feel a flurry of emotion stirring within him. Do Sun-woo would have caught the weight if it hadn't been for his mistake. Therefore, Bae Sung-hyun would have been pushed to 2nd place. To Bae Sung-hyun, it was clear what this meant. I could lose next time. Luckily, Do Sun-woo had made a mistake this time. However, there was no guarantee that this would happen again. He could lose in the next physical test. No, he would lose for sure. From an objective viewpoint, Do Sun-woo's strength was greater than his. As that thought popped up, an emotion that Bae Sung-hyun had long forgotten started to slowly creep into his mind. It was the feeling of inferiority. Inferiority was an emotion that had been hidden away in Bae Sung-hyun. It lurked behind the shadow of superiority. It was the emotion that Bae Sung-hyun detested and also one that he thought he would not feel again. Kim Bok-dong approached the sprawled out Do Sun-woo in the middle of the field. Do Sun-woo was moaning with pain as he lay down on the field. Fortunately, he seemed to be conscious. Are you okay? Kim Bok-dong asked. Ah, erg. Yes, sir, I'm fine. Do Sun-woo responded as he forcefully sat up with his shaking body. At a glance, it was apparent that he had sustained injuries everywhere. Some of his muscles were torn to the point of bruising, and his knee joint seemed to be twisted at an awkward angle. It was an injury that would cause most people to have a hard time getting up. Kim Bok-dong drew a blessing array to help Do Sun-woo. This moderate blessing of healing won't heal you completely, but it should help with the pain. Thank you, Sir, Do Sun-woo said. Your record is 83 meters, and you are in 12th place. Do you have any objections? No, Sir, Do Sun-woo replied. Alright, go to the nurse's office. Kim Bok-dong instructed. Do Sun-woo slowly trudged away, his face filled with disappointment. Kim Bok-dong stared at Do Sun-woo moving into the distance. It was amazing that he could prop himself up after the injury, but something else really amazed him. He almost succeeded. In the entire history of FA, only 2 had passed a physical test by satisfying the special conditions. One was the son of the Pope and the other was Kim Bok-dong himself. Back when Kim Bok-dong was a student at FA, he used all the blessings he could to pass the physical test while satisfying the special conditions. However, Do Sun-woo had almost succeeded with just the aid of his lesser blessing of strength. This meant that although he did not seem to be talented in blessings, his physical capabilities exceeded those of normal students. No, Do Sun-woo's body could only be described as blessed by God. That concludes the physical test. 1st place goes to Bae Sung-hyun, in 2nd place is Koo Joon-hyuk, and in 3rd place is Young In-ah. Everyone else, find out what place you came in by yourselves. You will be graded based on your ranking. You are dismissed. Head back to your classroom. Amidst the flying dust, everyone in the class of charity was thinking the same thinking. Bae Sung-hyun could grab 1st place through his talents, Koo Joon-hyuk took 2nd place with ease, and Young In-ah used her talented blessing to overcome her lack of physical strength. Everyone was talented and had their strengths. But it was Do Sun-woo who was engraved in Kim Bok-dong's memory. Did you trip on the stairs? Or did you fall from the roof? No, I was taking the physical exam. Physical exam? Ha, no one would be fooled by that lie. I'm serious. Yeah, alright. I've taken care of your injuries, but make sure you don't partake in any strenuous exercise, okay? It felt like the nurse didn't believe in the whereabouts of my injuries, but pretended she believed me. However, she had healed me, so I had no complaints. On my way back to my classroom, Legba spoke to me again after being silent for a while. Think of your body before you use any powers. You must be more careful now that we don't have our altar. Their words were blunt. It was Legba's way of showing that they cared. I won't do it again next time. If you do, your body will be broken beyond repair. Do you want to die before your 20th birthday? Meh, it's fine. The Loa's powers were so great that they came with severe side effects. Basu's powers were among the ones that had a relatively minor disadvantage. Other Loa powers were more widely applicable, stronger, and had stronger side effects. One could use the altar to minimize the backlash or increase the scope of power. However, it was useless at the moment because the altar was lost. I finally arrived at the classroom. The class seemed to be in the middle of the daily closing announcement. Ah, I see you've made it. Class president, let Do Sun-woo know what I said and tell him how numerous kidnappings have been happening around the area. Everyone, get home safe and don't play too late into the night, okay? The class teacher, Ha Yi-jin, walked out of the room shortly after making the announcement. All the students followed suit, packed their bags, and made their way home. Bae Sung-hyun came over with the announcement papers. "See for yourself," Bae Sung-hyun said. He passingly threw the papers onto my desk and made his way out of the classroom. He had been smiling, but it was fake and his voice was laced with hostility. Why did he do that? That was a good question. As I made my way toward my house, I was greeted by a familiar, gloomy, and ominous alleyway. It was not long before I saw the old crippled man. Right away, I took out my wallet and took out a 10,000 won bill, placing it into the man's tin can. "Oh, you have money to spare. This much should be fine." "Good life," Ligba said brusquely. I just laughed. I indeed did not have that much money. However, I was not poor enough to be stingy about that much money doing a good deed. Everyone else doing okay? Ah, now that you mention it, that bastard Baron Samedi. Oh, no. Legba suddenly dropped dead silent. This had to be one of two cases. Either Legba suddenly was in a bad mood or there was someone nearby. I looked around. As I expected, a girl was gazing at me from the opposite sidewalk. Her curly hair glistened in the sunlight. She was wearing the FA uniform and on her chest was a name tag that said Young Ah. The girl was Young Ah, she had made it to third place during our physical test. "Who were you talking to?" Young Ah asked with a smile as she made her way toward me. I felt goosebumps all over my body. Most people who witnessed my conversations with Legba thought I was crazy. For some, it didn't stop there. It could lead to gossip talking about how I talked into thin air. If this happened, I knew my school life would be done for. I knew I needed to be careful with my words to stop any weird rumors. I was praying. "Oh. Was I disturbing you?" Young Ah said with an apologetic face. Thanks to Korea declaring Romanicanism as the official national religion, it was easy to use praying and holy book reciting as an excuse to escape these situations. I had gained this wisdom through many years of practice by fabricating lies and excuses. "Don't worry about it. It's fine. I'm sorry I didn't think you'd be praying. I've never seen a person pray while walking," Young Ah said as she bowed her head down in guilt. Luckily, it seemed she was buying the story. It was just an assumption, but she seemed very naive, seeing how she was easily persuaded by a lie made up on the spot. "Is this the way toward your house?" "Yup. Hey, we live in the same direction. Mind if I join you?" she said as she smoothly made her way next to me. Before I knew it, I was walking alongside her. There was an awkward pause. Although we were classmates, it was the same as just meeting her, so I guess that was standard. "Hey, why did you give money to that person?" Young Ah asked, breaking the silence. "That person? Oh, are you talking about the old man?" "Yup." I pondered for a bit. I felt bad for him and I thought it wouldn't be too bad to give him a 10,000 won bill, I replied. "But he isn't disabled. I've seen him get up after getting his day's worth of donations. I've even seen him getting on the bus." "Oh?" I answered nonchalantly. "Do you still feel bad for him? He must have his reasons." I didn't care if he was disabled or was acting disabled. I couldn't help but think about how desperate he had to be to succumb to such standards. "I bet you've heard that you are a pushover." "No, that you're kind-hearted." "A pushover?" "Ah, no, I meant anyways." Young Ah fumbled as she tried to recover from her mistake. The physical test." I was amazed, she said as she tried to change the subject. "Yeah, I didn't think there'd be a person who would go for the special condition. It's crazy to think that someone in their right mind would attempt to catch their own weight." It was crazy and I ended up failing. I tried to continue the conversation. "You almost succeeded, though." I couldn't even get myself to try. "I'm not good with physical stuff." "Third place is still pretty good," I said. Even with the small compliment, Young Ah had an embarrassed blush on her face. "Thanks," she said with a smile. It seemed like she wasn't used to getting praised. She was very transparent, observing her facial expressions made it easy to figure out her feelings. A brief period of silence followed. Once again, Young Ah broke the silence. It appeared that she could not bear awkward situations. I have a question. Why did you come to FA? It seems that you would have done well as a mercenary. Do you have the strength of one?" "Me? Mercenaries?" They were similar to clergymen since they also fought demons, but they were different in how they were rewarded for their efforts. Clergymen got paid monthly by the Holy See, while mercenaries were paid per case by their employer. Most people who were physically strong but had no talent for divine power abilities usually enrolled in a mercenary academy. However, my purpose was to become a prelate and meet my mother. To do that, I had to become a clergyman, not a mercenary. Nonetheless, I had no intention of telling her the truth. "I guess my parents influenced me," I replied instead. "Oh, both your parents are clergymen. One passed away during the Holy War." If one thought about it, I wasn't lying. A sudden turn of conversation into my family affairs seemed to catch Young Ah off guard. "Oh. Are you sure you want to tell me this? Yeah, it's not something I'm ashamed about. No, I get it, but still. Having martyred parents was not something to be ashamed of, but rather proud of. Not only that, but it also helped me enroll in FA. As the son of a martyr, I was given special leeway and could make it into the school, even with my poor entrance exam marks. Anyway, it wasn't a problem to talk about it with others. Why did you enroll in FA? I asked out of politeness. Young-in-ah seemed to murmur something under her breath. At last, she looked up with a determined face. For me, my younger sibling was kidnapped by a cult and is still missing. I was hoping I could find them if I became a clergywoman, she said with a sad face. The reason was a lot deeper than I expected. I felt a pang of guilt in my chest. Our religion was technically a cult, although we didn't participate in crimes like kidnapping. Cult? What kind of cult? There are a lot of them out there, right? I asked, just to be sure. Yeah, they're famous for being ruthless and vicious, Young-in-ah said through gritted teeth. Her fragile neck was tense enough to see a vein. Just thinking about the cult that had taken her sibling from her seemed to drive her mad. After a few moments, she took a deep breath and calmed herself. She put up a smile as if to say that nothing had happened. The contrast in emotions and that smile seemed to be a raw expression of her rage. Have you heard about the voodooists? She said with a smile. I couldn't return the smile.